Hello, friends. Imagine this: excavations in the desert, dust, stone blocks, traces of ancient burials. Archaeologists expect to find the usual vessels, tools, or ornaments. But suddenly, among the sand, a strange object appears. A stone disc with 3 curved blades, a perfectly carved hub in the center, and a thin rim around the edge. It looks more like a part of some mechanism than an object from a tomb created 5,000 years ago. This is how, in 1936, the Disc of Sabu was discovered, one of the most mysterious relics of ancient Egypt. The longer you look at it, the more questions arise. Why did the craftsman choose such a fragile material, which breaks so easily when carved? How, in the age of stone tools, were they able to cut such thin and elegant elements? And most importantly, why? Was it for rituals, for practical use, or are we looking at an object whose purpose is still unknown to us? For almost a century, scholars have argued. Some are convinced that it is nothing more than a stone copy of a metal vessel. Others suggest that the disc might have had a technical function as part of some mechanism. And the boldest theories claim that this artifact could not have appeared in Egypt without advanced knowledge or even extraterrestrial influence. And here's the most fascinating part. Once you learn why this artifact is called impossible for its time, your view of the ancient Egyptians will change forever. Ready to uncover secrets hidden for millennia? Then let's begin. When you first look at the Disc of Sabu, it may seem like something simple and not particularly remarkable. But the longer you examine this object, the more you realize it seems to fall out of its time. The disc was made of siltstone, a variety of shale. This is a very fragile stone that crumbles and splits easily. Imagine trying to cut out curved elements and a very thin rim along the edge from such material. One small mistake and the entire work turns into a pile of fragments. Nevertheless, the craftsmen of 5,000 years ago coped with the task. The diameter of the disc is about 61 centimeters. In the center is a cylindrical hub, reminiscent of a part that could be mounted on an axle. From it extend 3 curved blades. They are not completely symmetrical, and this is precisely what gives the disc a special mystery. It creates the impression that the shape was designed for movement, like the blades of a fan or a pump. But if this is true, then why would the ancient Egyptians need such an object? Today, archaeologists know well that the craftsmen of that era could carve vessels from hard types of stone, but the Disc of Sabu stands apart. It is too thin, too delicate, and too complex for processing. Attempts to reproduce it using the tools available to the Egyptians of the First Dynasty usually end in failure. The stone breaks. And this gives rise to the main question: how were the craftsmen able to bring such a fragile design to life? If you look at the shape more carefully, you can see something symbolic in it. The curved blades resembled the petals of a flower or a spiral motion, which in Egyptian culture was often associated with the idea of rebirth and the eternal cycle of life. The central hub in this case could be a symbol of the axis of the world, around which everything revolves. Perhaps the disc was not a utilitarian object, but a model of the universe created for rituals. Comparison with other finds only reinforces the mystery. In the tombs of ancient nobles, many vessels, figurines, and household items were found, each with an obvious purpose. But the Disc of Sabu has no analogues. Its shape is not repeated in any other known artifact. It seems to stand apart, as if created according to a logic different from the entire rest of the heritage of ancient Egypt. And this is precisely what makes it truly unique. Before us is an object that combines incredible craftsmanship, a technological enigma, and, possibly, profound symbolism. To understand the mystery of the Disc of Sabu, it is important to return to the moment when it was discovered. The year was 1936. The English archaeologist Walter Bryan Emery was conducting excavations at Saqqara, one of the most significant necropolises of ancient Egypt. It was here that the tombs of nobles and the elite who served the first pharaohs were located. Emery uncovered a tomb that, by all indications, belonged to a man of high status at the court of Pharaoh Anajeb, who ruled during the First Dynasty, approximately between 3100 and 2900 BCE. The deceased was named Sabu. We know little about him, but enough to understand he was not an ordinary official. His name has been preserved in inscriptions indicating his positions and honorary titles. Sabu held a high position close to the royal court and probably managed important economic or ritual affairs. The tomb where he was buried was arranged on a grand scale, worthy of a man belonging to the circle of the pharaoh's confidants.
Inside the tomb, archaeologists found what is usually found in such burials: stone vessels, ceramics, tools, and household items considered by the Egyptians to be necessary in the afterlife. Most of these things were entirely understandable in their purpose. These were bowls, dishes, jugs, small figurines. Everything corresponded to the usual canons of the funerary inventory of the era. And it was among this ordinary array that the Disc of Sabu was found, an object that did not fit into any category. Emery immediately noted the unusual nature of the find. The stone disc did not resemble a vessel, nor a lamp, nor a decorative element. Its shape was so unfamiliar to Egyptian art that the scientist noted this in his report, calling the artifact unique and mysterious. He described the material, siltstone, fragile and difficult to work with, and emphasized the complexity of the form, which required enormous skill. It is important to note that the Disc of Sabu was not found alone, but in a context that makes it even more intriguing. Nearby were quite understandable objects, created with the same technologies and the same craftsmanship as thousands of other Egyptian artifacts of that time. This indicates that the craftsmen who made the disc were not alien engineers, as enthusiasts of alternative history like to fantasize. They were Egyptians, living in the era of the formation of the First Dynasties. But for some reason, they put colossal effort into creating an object that remains incomprehensible even after 5,000 years. The archaeological context gives us another clue. Sabu was a man whose life was closely intertwined with religious and state rituals. His positions indicate that he may have been responsible for certain sacred ceremonies or economic processes at court. Therefore, it is not surprising that a subject with special symbolic or ritual significance could be placed in his tomb. But then, why does the shape of the disc have no analogs? Why do we not see anything like it in any other tomb, not even among the pharaohs? Some researchers suggest that the Disc of Sabu was a kind of experiment or a unique commission created specifically for him. Perhaps the form reflected Sabu's personal beliefs or symbolism associated with his functions at court. But the absence of analogs makes this artifact even more mysterious. If it was a symbolic object, why do similar symbols not appear anywhere else? Another important point: time. The First Dynasty was the beginning of Egyptian statehood. At this time, the canons of art, religious traditions, and rituals were only being formed. It can be assumed that the Disc of Sabu was created precisely during this period of searches and experiments, when craftsmen and priests tried new forms that had not yet been fixed in culture. In this case, before us may be evidence of a unique moment in the history of Egypt, an artifact reflecting an experimental stage that did not receive continuation. And yet, the context only intensifies the intrigue. We see the disc was in the tomb of a man of high rank, surrounded by ordinary objects, but it alone has no analogs. This means that either we are missing some important part of the picture, or we are indeed dealing with an artifact created for a special purpose, not yet clear to us. Today, archaeologists view the Disc of Sabu as one of those finds that challenge science. It is not just beautiful or unusual, it forces us to reconsider our understanding of the craftsmanship and symbolism of the Egyptians of the First Dynasty. And for the general public, it has become a symbol of a mystery that has not yet received an answer.
And that is why it is so important to consider the versions of its purpose. What was it? A vessel? A ritual symbol? A technical object? Or something else entirely? After all, it was precisely the hypotheses about its function that turned the Disc of Sabu into one of the most discussed mysteries of ancient Egypt. When you look at the Disc of Sabu, the first thought is, it must have been meant to do something. Its shape is too unusual, too complex to be just decoration. And that is why, for almost a century, archaeologists and enthusiasts of mysteries have argued, what is this object, and why was it created? The most traditional version sounds almost mundane. It is a ritual vessel or lamp. According to Egyptologists, the disc could have been a stone copy of a metal object. In ancient Egypt, it was common to make everyday utensils from a more eternal material for tombs, so that the deceased would have everything needed in the afterlife. Copper vessels and objects of daily use lost their shape and deteriorated over time, while stone, on the contrary, preserved its immortality. Therefore, archaeologists suggest that the Disc of Sabu could embody the idea of eternity, a kind of symbol of the durability and steadfastness of existence. In this case, the blades might imitate the form of a metal bowl with petals or parts that were once familiar to the craftsman but did not survive to our time. However, here lies one nuance. Why put in so much effort to recreate such a complex form from fragile shale? The Egyptians handled ordinary vessels perfectly well, which are found in dozens of tombs. And this imbalance between the labor invested and the purpose made many researchers doubt the simple version. Against this backdrop, another hypothesis appeared. Perhaps the Disc of Sabu had a technical purpose. Its shape, with a hub in the center and 3 curved blades, really does resemble modern mechanisms. Some saw in it a part of a pump, others compared it with a fan or even a wheel. It seems that if you inserted it into some system, it could rotate or interact with air and water. But here arises a serious contradiction. The material. Siltstone is too fragile to withstand any load. It would have cracked at the very first rotation. Moreover, there is no other evidence that Egyptians of the First Dynasty used such mechanisms. Their world was built on simple technologies, without complex moving parts. Therefore, the version of the functional purpose of the Disc of Sabu looks impressive, but extremely unlikely. Nevertheless, it was this hypothesis that gave rise to a whole wave of alternative versions. Supporters of ancient technologies claim that the Disc of Sabu could have been part of a lost machine, a device about which we know nothing. In this logic, it becomes proof that the Egyptians possessed knowledge that was later forgotten. And some went even further, into the realm of fantasy. Assumptions appeared that the Disc of Sabu was not of Egyptian origin, that it was brought from elsewhere. From this was born the version of an extraterrestrial artifact. Too complex a form, too unusual a design, which means people simply could not have made it.
But whatever it is, one thing is clear. The Disc of Sabu occupies a special place among Egyptian finds. It does not give a clear answer and therefore generates endless questions.